We were dropping the traps when the guy next to me, there was a moment of distraction and the cable got looped up.
He fell onto the deck of the boat and off he went, dragged by his feet.
As soon as the boat stopped and we could undo the cable, the boot was completely torn apart. If it had been a half hitch, that guy would have been dead.
It wasn't the first time he'd been lobster fishing. You can't say, when I go fishing, I'm not scared. No, you don't say that. You can't say that, because if you do, it could get dangerous.
When you go lobster fishing, falls overboard are not fishtails. They are true and often dramatic stories. Commercial fishing in general is a high-risk activity. Long working hours on a moving deck, bad weather, and tight spaces make fishing one of the most difficult and most dangerous occupations. To prevent falls overboard, this film shows preventive practices, strategies, and tricks of the trade developed by professional lobster fishers.
In general, fishing is a job that comes with risks. And it's hard to get rid of those risks completely. But you can get organized in a way that minimizes it so that there are the fewest accidents possible.
In the United States, falls overboard on lobster boats are the cause of more than half of fatal accidents. In Quebec, in 2010, and about a year later in 2011, 2 deckhands lost their lives when they fell overboard. Aware of the dangers, fishers in the Gaspé and Magdalen Islands worked with researchers from l'Université Laval and Marinov. They were funded by l'Institut de recherche Robert Sauvé en santé et en sécurité du travail. And together, they identified the risks of falls overboard and how to prevent them.
Falling overboard is very rare. It doesn't happen often. What us fishermen did, well, we worked a lot with the IRSST. And in the Magdalen Islands and the Gaspé, we got a great response. So fishermen joined in on those studies. They answered surveys, and a few fishermen even brought teams aboard their boats.
So that left more room here.
Yeah, that's it. I thought it was too tight. You'd put your leg on?
Okay.
This study led to a better understanding of the work on lobster boats in Quebec. It also helped identify methods used to manage the risk of falls overboard and to work efficiently.
So here there's a lot more room to work to go get the buoys.
Yeah, no, lots.
Primary objective of the research was to understand the essential activity of fishing, the occupational activity, in order to improve the safety of those fishermen.
The dangers of falling overboard exist all right, especially when the sea's rough. I'm not in danger because I'm behind the wheel, but the deckhand, when he's on deck, there's more danger there.
The fishers questioned by the researchers identified the first day of the fishing season as being the most dangerous.
It's really something. There are 325 boats that take off at the same time, same hour, from every port on the island.
The worst day for me is when we first set the traps. We leave with boats that sometimes have 270 traps on board. And when a boat's loaded down with lobster traps, it's real dangerous.
The captains are stressed out. They want to get out to sea. It's been weeks they've been waiting for this. Then things come together, and me, I want to set my traps before everyone else, and this guy wants to put his traps in before that guy. Yeah, it gets dangerous.
I never sleep the night before the traps are first set.
Then everybody takes off at the same time. They're off for another season. Off to conquer the king of the sea, the lobster. The fishermen are excited to go fishing. Some won't go out if the weather's bad. We have an opening date analysis committee here on the Magdalen Islands. It's a great grassroots initiative. When the wind is stronger than 20 knots, the opening date gets postponed. So today, the weather's a lot better for dropping our traps. There's a lot less risk than there was before. It takes some of the stress out of the day the traps are first set.
The fishing season can last from 63 to 70 days. On every vessel, between 13 and 20,000 traps are handled every season. The way the traps are loaded is a crucial step in preventing falls overboard.
Before, I'd make like 4 trips with 60 traps. When I did the program in 2012, with the pictures I saw, I figured out there was a problem. I noticed that when I hit a wave, the load swayed. It was then that me and my deckhand decided to change how we did things. Since 2013, we've loaded from the back to the front. And we take 48 traps at a time instead of 60. We're lower in height, and that makes the boat more stable. Time-wise, it takes maybe 15 minutes longer for 5 trips than it used to take us to make 4.
The greatest hazard comes from the ropes getting tangled. Over time, and according to the vessel, fishers have developed methods of piling the traps in order and arranging the ropes and buoys to reduce the dangers when the traps are set.
The boats aren't all the same either. There are big boats and there are smaller ones. There's ones that are wider than others. The loading techniques aren't the same either. I think it's important that you know your own boat and that you load. They have a technique for loading the boat that works with the sea and with the boat that you have. It's really the guy who drops the traps who's responsible for the ropes. That's the bottom line.
Usually it's Jean-François who loads the traps himself. It's him who loads. I help. It's him who knows, because when there's a trap to grab, he knows which one. He's got his way of doing things, always in the same direction.
Each loading method has its own advantages and disadvantages. The method used should enable fishers to limit errors and unexpected events. It should minimize the dangers that happen when the lines pay out and the traps are dropped. This working method should be known and shared by all hands on board. But no equipment, no matter how state-of-the-art, can replace a good working relationship on board. It's essential. The main preventive strategies when loading the traps. Assign the loading of the traps to the person who will drop them. Determine and respect the order in which the traps will be set. Arrange the ropes to avoid the risk of being dragged when the traps are set. Place the buoys for each trawl in the right place. Adapt the height of the load of the traps to the weather conditions. Respect the limitations specified in the stability booklet for the number of traps and height. Provide enough space for the person who drops the first trawls. After untying the mooring lines, most deckhands join the captain in the wheelhouse. It's safer. But when they get to the fishing grounds, they move to their workstation.
When we're at the stern, at the hauler, and we're on our way to change fishing locations, we're bringing the traps on board, the motor's noisy, the waves, there's so much happening. For me, to get the captain to hear me up front, I have to yell pretty loud.
When the traps are being set, the crew must agree on the working methods and be familiar with what each other is doing. Above all, they must go slow. The boat speed has a direct impact on safety at sea.
The captain has to tell the deckhand how things work and what has to be done on the boat. The captain has to create a culture of safety, of safe behavior.
There have been years where there's been several captains who took the responsibility of putting fewer traps on board and taking their time, but there are still some who really load up their boats because they want to get out there as fast as they can. That's a problem.
After that, my first trap, I'll get it, put it on the table, let out my line. The second trap, I'll put it on the table, up to 7. I don't have to take my traps right from there to set them. They're already on the table. So I throw out my first buoy, I throw out the first trap, the line pays out, and then I just have to push. The trap can move any way it wants. It could swing a bit to the left or a bit to the right. It can do what it wants. I don't have to ask myself if it's okay. You don't have your feet in the ropes. There are no questions to ask. We know how we're organized. We barely need to talk.
The guy who drops them has to have his eyes on the lines. He's the one responsible for setting the traps. We load from front to back, so when you start to drop them, it's from the back. Everything's dropped from the back of the boat. Since there's no more room, I put it in neutral to drop them. And we work with the current. If the current's going out or coming in, we drift with it. And I'm always looking back to see what's happening, and we keep communicating.
I get up to about 1,200 RPMs. That could be between 3 or 4 knots to drop my traps. Some other guys, they go faster, but most of them, the fishers here, they really respect that.
When the trawls are dropped, the deckhand can lose his balance or be dragged by the fishing gear. If the ropes get tangled, it can be catastrophic. Having a third hand on board lessens the risk.
With just 2 hands on deck, I'd say it's almost impossible. Because, no, it goes too fast. It's too dangerous. There always has to be another hand to help us. It takes somebody with some idea what to do, because if you take on someone who's never done it, it's no help.
There's 2 guys on deck, one dropping the trap, and the other's there to lend a hand. Because the traps are up high, and it's pretty high. He's got to help lower the first 2 rows. After that, it's almost always the same guy who will drop the traps. The other guy's there to watch. If something happens, he'll tell me, and I'll put her in reverse. And there's a knife close by, so if something happens, he'll cut the line.
Obviously, the way the traps and the lines are placed during the loading process have a direct impact on the risk when the traps are set. The observations did not allow the researchers to say whether one method is better than the other, but all the fishers agree on certain preventive strategies. The main preventive strategies when the traps are initially set. Add an extra deckhand if space permits. Ensure that the person who drops the traps is the one who loaded them. Agree on the method of setting the traps and adapt it to the weather conditions. Slow down the speed of the lobster boat. Stay clear of the ropes. Communicate clearly and always be aware of what everyone else is doing. At dawn, when the weather is good, the crew takes to sea to haul up the traps. The first step, finding and catching the buoy.
A buoy? You never know when you get to it, if it's snagged, if the trap's snagged on the bottom. If you snare the buoy and don't shift in reverse to try to stop the movement, you'll go right in after it.
You let the gaff go. It's not rocket science. You let it go. The gaff floats. We'll go back and pick it up. It's no big deal. You can't go thinking that you're going to go hold on to the buoy by hanging on to the gaff, because you're going to go in after it.
I've only got one option with my guy. If you snag the buoy and there's resistance, you let it go. It's plain and simple. Don't worry about the buoy. I'll go back and get it. Let the gaff go. I'll go back for it. For your safety.
To snare the buoy or bring up the trap, the fisher must not lean overboard. The height of the bulwark, commonly called the washboard, has a direct impact on the risk of falling overboard.
As the boat approaches to get close to the buoy gets caught under the boat with the current, and you go to get it. You're out there, more than half your body outside the boat, looking for the buoy. If it's caught on a rock, you could easily fall overboard.
The higher the bulwark, the safer it is. It should be above the fisher's knees. The main preventive strategies when snaring the buoy. Stop and position the boat properly. Have the right size gaff adapted to the boat. Let go of the gaff if there's too much resistance. Ensure that the bulwark height is safe. Store the gaff safely and accessibly. Communicate with and be seen by the captain. Hauling up 235 traps or more a day is a difficult job. It requires a good hauler and well-adapted equipment.
There are two types of haulers. A difference between the haulers in the Gaspé and the Magdalen Islands is that ours is attached to the deck and the bulwark. The ones in the Gaspé are higher.
I've always used a hauler that stood straight. This year we changed it to a hauler on a rod, but higher. Because we talk a lot about ergonomics, you shouldn't bend too much to pick up a trap. Today, we don't bend down. With the new hauler they put in for me, I'm always standing straight. My trap, I just have to, when it comes up, I move and then I put it on the washboard.
In the Gaspé, they fish in water that's not as deep. So haulers can be, let's say, a bit less solid than ours, because we're fishing in really deep waters.
The research on the hauler was mainly to find the best position, height, and distance. That can prevent fishermen from getting backaches and can even mean you avoid leaning out over the water.
We also learned how to work without hurting ourselves to avoid getting injured. You strain, you lift, you turn to one side, then you go to catch it and it's all crooked. It's hard on the back. 90 pounds each. When you've lifted 60 in a day, you start to feel like you've had enough.
The main preventive strategies when the traps are being hauled up. Ensure that the bulwark height is safe. Avoid leaning too far out of the boat. Use the fixed structure of the hauler as support if needed. Position the hauler controls to minimize the risk of getting caught in the sheaves. Promote the installation of a hauler that will reduce effort. Manage the lines at the foot of the hauler in order to work with the feet firmly planted on deck. Set up the trap table to ensure the traps are stable. Set up the trap table to provide easy access to the catch and the bait. Install non-slip material on the table. The location and setup of the hauler varies, depending on the configuration of the vessel. Each captain must find the best compromise between reducing the risk of falls and working efficiently.
The rope, it's a trap. If it's turned like this and you have the bad luck of taking a step and part of your rubber boot gets caught in that, if there's 4 traps in the water, forget it. You can't stop it with your hands or anything else.
When the traps are reset, the risk of being dragged by the lines or the traps is always there. Some fishers set up their boat to avoid working with their feet on the ropes.
It's a routine job, so sometimes it goes fast, sometimes everything goes well, but sometimes you could also have bad luck. You throw out the trap, but you forgot to stand behind it.
We're just starting to think about safety and paying attention and all that. But before, the lines would move all over the boat. We would drag our feet on the deck all the time, so they wouldn't get caught up in the rope. That's why some guys, it'd cost them 3-4 pairs of rubber boots during the lobster fishing season, which only lasts 9 weeks.
Before 2012, before we started with the IRSST project, the lines were always around your feet, even at the hauler. When the new system was installed, I said to my buddy, geez, that's a good idea. We don't have the lines in our way anymore. That's something that's improved with time. It wasn't done before. It was thanks to the program that we started to figure things out.
The main preventive strategies when the traps are reset. Slow down the speed of the lobster boat. Place the ropes on the trap table. Avoid working with feet on the ropes. Communicate with and be seen by the captain. Keep the deck clean and uncluttered. At the request of the researchers, the fishers drafted some 50 scenarios of falls overboard and close calls. In almost half the cases, fishing gear was involved. Shifting the trawls in the fishing area when all the equipment is on deck is also dangerous. Piling up the traps on deck increases the risks of falling overboard because of the ropes.
When we bring the trawls aboard the boat, or when they're reset, well, the ropes and trawls move in opposite directions. So that's what we're trying to understand with the fishermen, how it works, and what could be done to make it less dangerous for them.
For the last 2 years, me and my deckhand are more likely to shift one trawl at a time. Just shift one trawl, it's easier, and it's not as dangerous.
The main preventive strategies when trawls are shifted in the fishing area. Avoid shifting trawls when the weather is bad. Only take on the number of trawls that space permits. Keep the ropes away from the fisher's feet. Ideally, place the traps on the washboard or the table. Losing one's balance, slipping, being struck by an object, these dangers are always present at sea. All the fishers agree on the importance of an uncluttered deck with a non-skid surface.
When you remove the old bait and toss it into the container beside you, well, you're not looking at the container. You just grab it like that and toss it. So out of 3 pieces of bait, maybe one will fall on the ground. And you don't notice. The boats are all made of fiberglass, so it's slippery, and you've got an old piece of bait lying around, you step on it, oh, there she goes, you fall. You could fall on your butt, you could fall on your head, you could even kill yourself.
Another warning from the fishers is to avoid loose clothing or equipment that could catch on something. At sea, you must be vigilant at all times. You must be in good physical shape, rested, and focused.
Clothes are also important. The clothes we've got on, not to have laces, things that stick out, so they don't get caught in the sheaves. The hydraulic system, it's really powerful. You can't stop that with your bare hands, that's for sure.
When you're on the water, your feet aren't on the ground. For me, that's important. When I teach my students, I always say, remember, you're on the water and it's deep. So make sure you do what you have to do to get back to the shore alive and well.
The main preventive strategies on deck. Clean the work surfaces on a regular basis. Use non-skid materials or mats. Attach or anchor equipment. Always remain vigilant. Fishing is done, but the day is far from over. At the wharf, the boat must be moored, the lobsters unloaded, and the boat taken care of. Right up to the end, the risk of a fall or an accident is always there. The lobster fishing industry is in constant evolution, and the training of new fishers is very important.
On the Magdalen Islands, we're proud that the new fishermen are taking extensive training.
90% of the young captains and even the experienced captains are certified.
My advice is to do all the courses from A to Z. Radio, life-saving. With our parents' and grandparents' generation, if you didn't want to go to school, you'd be a fisherman. Today, that's changed a lot. It's the opposite. If you want to fish, you go to school.
They go to school about 5 months in the winter, then they go fish.
And so you go out with the young ones that are much better prepared, much better trained. Today, a new fisherman is just as good as an old fisherman with experience.
Maybe I was a little too scared, but I always tried to make sure nothing would happen to me. Even so, things have happened. Things that could have killed me.
It's the job we chose, it's the job we do. As for me, I surely can't see myself doing anything else.